People say, you should speak up. But they never tell you what to do when the people closest to you choose to stay silent. My name is Hana. I work behind the scenes in television, editing other people's stories, cutting their flaws, and smoothing the ugly edges. At home, I did the same. For years, I trimmed my truth to keep his image clean. The night he shoved me into the cabinet, I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. I just lay there, listening. To the sound of my own breath, to the click of my parents' bedroom door upstairs. Closing. They heard everything. And chose nothing. 2 hours later, I wasn't on the floor anymore. I was in the control booth. And for once, I didn't censor the truth. I broadcast it. On paper, we looked perfect. Elliot and I both worked in television. He was a senior producer, always the one in charge of the final call. The one who spoke in meetings with a calm, commanding voice that made interns sit straighter and executives lean in. I was behind the scenes, editing, scheduling, and fixing last-minute disasters no one saw. To the outside world, we were a power couple. At award galas, we matched in black. At dinner parties, he'd call me sharp, and I'd laugh like I believed it. At home, it was different. Subtler. He never yelled. Not the way people expect abusers to yell. He corrected, he revised. He cut me down in clean lines and quick glances. Is that what you're wearing? Maybe let me handle this. Try using your head next time. It started small. Smaller than bruises. I stopped voicing ideas in meetings. I stopped ordering food he didn't like. I learned which silence kept the peace, and which silence made him mad. My friends thought I was thriving. I'd get messages like, how do you balance it all? Or, you two are couple goals. And I'd reply with a thumbs up emoji while reheating the dinner he refused to eat because it was cold. I didn't know when it crossed the line. Maybe it was the night he knocked my laptop off the table because a file wasn't labeled the way he wanted. Or when he deleted my segment edits and said I was too emotional to manage deadlines. Or maybe it was long before that, when I started calling what he did stress instead of control. Still, I stayed. Because it was easier to explain away bruises than to explain why a woman like me, a woman who looked composed, capable, and smart, could allow herself to be reduced like this. And because every time I thought about leaving, I remembered how good he was at telling stories, how easily he could make people believe his version. But I think the moment I truly began to leave wasn't the night he pushed me. It was 2 weeks earlier, at a wrap party. We were celebrating the network's latest ratings win. I stood with a drink in hand, smiling at nothing. Elliot had just finished a toast about the invisible hands who make magic behind the scenes. Everyone clapped. Then someone leaned toward me, an anchor I barely knew, and said, "You must feel so lucky. A man who actually respects your work." I don't remember what I said back. I only remember how hot my skin felt. Not from shame, from the effort it took not to scream. When we got home that night, he accused me of flirting. Said I was embarrassing him, that I was acting like I needed attention. He didn't hit me. He didn't need to. He just stood very still, his voice level, and said, "If you keep behaving this way, people will stop trusting you." And that threat, it didn't sound like a husband. It sounded like a producer pulling the plug on a segment. I began to document things after that, quietly, screenshots, audio files, a copy of the shared cloud drive, and just in case, I added a hidden camera to the living room bookshelf, meant for checking angles during rehearsals. He never noticed, because he never thought I'd look him in the eye and edit the truth back in. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary, gray. The kind of day that passes without remark unless something happens to stain it. My parents were visiting, staying upstairs in the guest room for a few days while their condo underwent repairs. It was their idea, a chance to spend time together. My mother had said over the phone. I said yes because I didn't know how to say no without raising suspicion. I told myself it might be good to have witnesses in the house, even though I already knew they wouldn't see what I needed them to. Dinner was quiet that night. Too quiet. Elliot barely spoke, and I knew that tone. The simmering silence, the clipped gestures, his fork scraping the plate just a little too sharply. He didn't like that I'd missed his call earlier. I'd been in a production meeting, my phone silenced. No apology was good enough when his ego felt bruised. After we cleared the dishes, he went to his office and shut the door. I stood at the sink for a while, hands submerged in warm water, trying to breathe the tension out of my chest. I could hear my mother upstairs, humming faintly as she folded laundry. My father coughed twice, his usual signal that he was settling in for a nap with the news playing in the background. The illusion of peace. And then the fuse broke. Elliot came out with his phone in hand, voice sharp. "You ignored me again." I turned slowly, drying my hands. "I told you I was in a meeting." His mouth curled, eyes cold. "Don't lie to me." I didn't respond. I didn't move. That's when he stepped forward fast and shoved me. Not a slap, not a grab, just one solid push to the chest, forceful enough to knock me backward into the dining table. My hip caught the corner. A plate slipped from the edge and shattered on the floor beside me. The pain came late. What arrived first was shock. The kind that stills your breath and makes the whole room go silent. And then I heard it. Upstairs. Footsteps. Movement. Then the sound of a door. Click. Not down the stairs. Not rushing in. Just the quiet click of my parents' bedroom door closing. I sat there on the floor for a moment, staring at the shards of porcelain around me. My elbow throbbed. My hip was already beginning to bruise. But the deeper bruise bloomed somewhere else. They'd heard it. They'd chosen not to come. Elliot didn't say a word. He stepped over the broken plate like it was nothing and walked to the living room. Picked up the remote, sat down. As if I had caused a disruption and he was reclaiming calm. I stood slowly, steadying myself on the edge of the table. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just gathered the pieces, one by one, and placed them on the counter. Later, in the bathroom, I looked at the faint red mark on my shoulder. It wasn't dramatic. It wouldn't show in photos. But it burned. I didn't bother hiding it. I didn't even mention it when I came upstairs and my mother asked, casually, if Elliot was feeling better. Feeling better. That's what she called it. I nodded and said I was going to bed early. She smiled gently and said, good idea. Things always look clearer in the morning. They didn't. What became clearer was this did. I had waited too long for someone else to name it. Now I would name it myself. Not abuse. Not assault. Not even betrayal. Silence. And silence, I realized, was its own kind of violence. That night, I turned on the hidden camera, checked the storage connection. Then I opened a new folder on my encrypted drive and titled it, without flinching, "This is where it starts." In the days that followed, I moved like a shadow in my own life. Elliot barely noticed the shift, because I made sure he wouldn't. I still packed his lunch, still reminded him of his call sheets, and still listened when he spoke about work like it was gospel. But at night, when the house fell still, I backed up files, footage, voice memos, screenshots of bank transfers and flagged emails. Everything went into an encrypted folder stored under an old project code, Winter Reels. I was done waiting for someone to protect me. I was building my own archive. There was one person I knew I could reach out to. Someone who understood what it meant to see everything behind the curtain and say nothing anyway. Kane. Kane was a lead technical operator at the station. Quiet, methodical. He didn't care for gossip, didn't linger in the break room, and didn't pretend to laugh at Elliot's jokes. He once helped me fix a corrupted audio file at midnight with no thanks or fanfare. I remembered that. So I waited until a slow Tuesday and found him in the editing bay, headphones on, cleaning up a voiceover for a nature docuseries. I knocked lightly and said one word, off, record. He paused, looked at me, and nodded. We didn't talk much. I told him I needed help securing a folder that couldn't be traced. I didn't tell him why. But Kane wasn't stupid. After 30 seconds of silence, he asked, "Is it personal?" I nodded. He didn't ask for details. He just said, use server 2B. Unlisted partition. I'll whitelist your access. You'll be the only login. Before I left, he added quietly, if this ever becomes a problem, I didn't see anything. It was the closest thing to an oath I'd ever been offered. That night, I tested the link, uploaded the first clip, a muted video of Elliot in the living room, pacing, berating me in low but cutting tones. The angle was wide and steady. No dramatic lighting. Just the dull honesty of a household gone silent. I watched myself on screen, chin lowered, hands clenched. Then I clicked, save, and closed the tab. In the mirror, my reflection looked calmer than it should have. That scared me more than the bruise had. The following weekend, Elliot left for a conference. 3 days out of town, I stayed behind, told him I had deadlines. He didn't argue. The morning he left, I opened a clean folder on my desktop. Title, Arable. Then I began stitching a timeline, not a dramatic edit, just facts, dates, statements, photos. A medical report I once lied about said I slipped in the studio hallway. The truth was, Elliot had pulled me backward by the arm during an argument about my tone. I kept the ER report. I never looked at it until now. I placed it all in sequence, labeled with quiet precision. It wasn't a show. It was a record. At the bottom of the timeline, I added one final slide, a still frame of me sitting alone in the control room, staring into the monitor. Caption. Unedited. I didn't know exactly what I would do with it. But I knew I wanted to reclaim my space before he filled it with more of his version. And then something changed. On Sunday, while reviewing audio files, I heard a clip I had forgotten I recorded. It was from a month ago. Elliot on the phone with someone, laughing. He said, "She's never gonna leave. People like her don't leave. They endure. They edit." He meant it as a joke. But it sat in my stomach like a stone. That night, I wrote a short script, a monologue, just a few lines. Not for him. For me. It opened with, "I've spent years editing around the truth. This time, I'm airing it. I didn't plan to use it. Not yet. But I saved the file anyway. Then I turned off the lights, sat in the dark, and waited for Monday. Monday morning came with quiet skies and a throat full of steel. I walked into the station carrying nothing unusual, just my usual messenger bag, a takeout coffee, and a flash drive tucked inside my glasses case. No one blinked. Because when you move like everything's normal, people don't stop to look closer. Elliot wasn't in yet. His flight from the conference landed afternoon, which gave me time. Not much, but enough. I headed straight to Studio 3, the small editing booth connected to one of the late-night backup feeds. It was typically used for B-roll segments and pre-approved reruns, safe content, forgotten airspace. But I knew something most people didn't. Every Monday between 2:55 and 3:15 p.m., a backup line stayed open for network diagnostics, silent, no graphics, just a branded card looping in the background. I'd routed the line before, once to run weather tests, once to check a lower, third overlay glitch. Today I would test something else. I slipped the flash drive into the system and labeled the file, Week 32 Bumper TST-MUV. Then I dragged it onto the playback timeline and let it sit there, unarmed, just in case. At 20:30 Kane passed by, didn't slow. He just slipped me a folded note as he moved. Feeds clean, loops unlocked, your move. My heart thudded once, not hard, just solid, like the sound of a heavy door being unlatched from inside. I waited until the studio was empty. Then I clicked into the playback preview and watched it once, just once. No commentary, no music. Just my voice layered over cuts of footage, the bruises, the shoves, the silence, the timeline. My mother's voice saying, "We're raised you stronger than that." Elliot saying, "People like you don't leave." May. I spent years editing around the truth. This time I'm airing it. I didn't hit POI. I just saved and closed the timeline, leaving it queued, ready but inert. That was all I'd planned. A quiet line of defense. A trigger I could pull if I ever needed it. But fate, apparently, doesn't wait for perfect timing. At 3:02 p.m. I stepped into Control Bay 2, intending to wipe the file, and found Kane standing inside. His fingers were on the board. His eyes are on the monitor. The red lively light was blinking. I froze. "Kane," I said, barely breathing. "What did you do?" He didn't answer right away, just turned slightly toward me and said, "Someone pulled the feed early." I blinked. "What?" He nodded toward the screen, and there it was. My file, not queued anymore, broadcasting. Across our test loop, onto the backup regional feed. Just low, key enough to go unnoticed by marketing, but lev enough to be caught by syndicates, night shift engineers, and public access observers. I felt my knees soften. "Kane," I whispered. He held up his hands. I didn't touch it, but someone did. We stared at each other for one long second. Then he added, "If I had to guess, Elliot left his credentials saved. Someone could have thought it was a promo reel, dragged it on air. Or maybe Kane had done it on purpose. I'd never know. But it didn't matter now, because the truth was no longer in a folder. It was out. The clip ran for 6 minutes. By the third, I was getting text messages from a producer in Portland. By the fifth, an editor from a sister station in Detroit had emailed, "Is this real?" And by the sixth, Elliot called. I didn't answer. I stood in the corner of the control room, hands curled around the edge of the console, watching my truth spool out into the world. No flashy transitions. No branding. Just me. When the reel ended, the screen cut back to black. The loop resumed like nothing had happened. I sat down slowly in the chair beside Kane. "That wasn't how I planned it," I said. "I know," he replied. "But it landed." I nodded once. Then I got up and walked back to my desk like it was any other Monday. My phone vibrated over and over. Producers, HR, Elliot again, my mother, a reporter I hadn't spoken in 5 years. I silenced every call, opened my inbox, and waited. I wasn't hiding anymore. Now I was watching who flinched first. The fallout didn't explode, it rippled. At 3:18 p.m., my video stopped airing. By 3:26, a junior producer forwarded it to the newsroom Slack. By 3:39, someone from digital marketing posted a screenshot in the wrong internal thread. And by 4:00 p.m., half the building had seen it. They didn't know what to do with it. Some thought it was an awareness campaign. Others assumed it was part of a future segment. And then the calls started coming in, not internally, from viewers. People had seen it, on backup feeds, through third-party syndication channels, and even YouTube clips pulled from screen recordings. It spread because no one knew how to stop it. I was still at my desk when I heard the elevator ding. Elliot's voice, seconds later, calm, tight, too loud. He stormed past me without stopping, into the glass conference room at the center of the floor. The door slammed. Through the glass, I watched him pace like a man in damage control. Not guilty. Just calculation. He pointed, barked into his phone. Then he stared at the wall like it had betrayed him. I turned back to my screen. Dozens of emails were flooding in. Some from colleagues I hadn't spoken to in months. Some with nothing but a subject line. "I saw it. That took courage. I believe you." At 40:12 HR requested a meeting. At 40:30, the station's legal counsel emailed me directly. We are investigating the unauthorized airing of personal material. Please preserve all relevant communications. I almost laughed. I forwarded everything. With one sentence, I have nothing to hide. At 4:47, my mother called. I didn't pick up. She left a message. Hannah, I didn't know. I saw the video, and your father. Please call me. We need to talk. Now she wanted to talk. By 5:03 p.m. Elliot's name was trending, not mine. His, because the world still frames stories by the person being accused, not the one surviving. And yet the comments weren't what I expected. Under a reposted clip, someone wrote, "This is the cleanest evidence I've ever seen. No drama, just facts." She didn't raise her voice. She raised the floor. Another said, "Not all bruises bleed, some just broadcast." I stood up, walked to the break room, and poured a cup of coffee. That's when Elliot found me. He was pale, jaw locked. His tie hung loose around his collar like it was choking him. He didn't yell. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" He hissed. I didn't respond. He stepped closer. "You've sabotaged your own career. You think this makes you look brave? It makes you look bitter." I sipped my coffee. Still didn't answer. He dropped his voice to a near whisper. "You think anyone's going to hire you after this? You think the network's going to let you stay? You aired your marriage, Hannah." I set the mug down. "You aired my pain, Elliot," I said calmly. "For 3 years, behind closed doors. You just didn't expect me to roll credits." He flinched, not visibly, but internally. I saw it behind his eyes, the crack forming. He stepped back. "I loved you," he muttered. "This is how you repay me." "No," I said. "This is how I free myself." Security arrived 10 minutes later. Not for me, for him. Someone upstairs had escalated the matter. He was asked to vacate the building pending investigation. He didn't resist. But he looked at me one last time, like he still didn't understand how I'd slipped from his grasp. I didn't look away, because he didn't deserve even that. By 6:00 p.m., I was sitting in the station's legal office. Not under accusation, but as a participant in a formal inquiry. They asked me how the file got on air. I told them I placed it in the test feed but never played it. That was the truth. Whether Kane pulled the trigger or someone else, it didn't matter anymore. The story was out. The system had recorded it. The viewers had witnessed it. And the silence had ended. Later that evening, I sat on my couch, shoes off, hair unpinned. I opened my laptop. I typed a short email to a national investigative reporter I admired, Elisa Carrington. I'd followed her work for years. She was the kind of woman who didn't flinch when the truth got ugly. Subject line: "If you're still listening, I have a story. And this time, the edit is clean." Elisa Carrington replied within an hour. Her email was short, sharp, and clear, just like the woman herself. I saw the broadcast. "If you're ready, I'm listening. Let's talk tomorrow, off the record for now." We set up a call for 10 a.m. the next day. I didn't sleep much that night, but I wasn't restless. I just thought. I thought about every moment I'd chosen silence. Every bruise I covered with makeup. Every time I laughed at Elliot's jokes in public while my knuckles were tight under the table. Every time my mother looked away. The next morning, I watched the sun rise from my kitchen window. No curtains, no fear. The light felt colder than I remembered, but also more honest. At 10 sharp, Elisa's face appeared on my laptop screen. No makeup, no backdrop, just a quiet room and her direct gaze. "You don't have to tell it all today," she said. "But whatever you say, I won't soften it." "I don't need soft," I replied. "I just need real." I gave her everything. The drive, the timeline, the photos, the ER reports, the audio files, even the clip of my mother's voicemail. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she leaned forward and said, "You already did the hard part. Now let me make sure they can't ignore it." 3 days later, the piece went live. The editor, who aired her truth, how one woman used her own network to break the cycle of silence. It wasn't just a story. It was a signal, and people heard it. My inbox flooded again, but this time with strangers, women, men, and former interns. People who had seen Elliot's charisma and felt something was wrong but never spoke. One message stood out. It was from a freelance video editor across the country. "Your calm hit harder than any headline. You didn't scream. You just rolled tape. Thank you." The station released an official statement. They called the incident deeply regrettable and promised to reevaluate internal systems that allowed such harm to go unacknowledged. Translation: we saw it. We can't unsee it. Now we're scrambling. Elliot's contract was terminated, pending review. But everyone knew he wouldn't be coming back. Not after the full segment aired on national morning news. Not after 3 other women came forward with eerily similar stories. He didn't call again. Instead, his attorney reached out, a vague warning about privacy violations and career sabotage. I forwarded it to Elisa. She sent back a single emoji. Then came the hardest part. Not the press, not the HR investigations. Calling my mother. She picked up on the third ring. She said, her voice tentative. I didn't waste time. I needed you to see it, I said, because you were there, and you still turned away. Silence. We thought, she began. We thought you'd tell us if it was serious. We didn't want to interfere in your marriage. You didn't interfere, I said. You abandoned. More silence. Then, finally, I'm sorry. It didn't feel like enough, but it also didn't feel empty. Just late. I don't need you to fix it, I said. I just needed to stop needing you. And that was peace. Not forgiveness. Not closure, just release. A week later, I was offered a new position at a nonprofit media group, editorial lead for Survivor-led storytelling. They'd seen my segment, called it the quietest revolution we've aired. I accepted. On my last day at the network, I cleared my desk with steady hands. No tears, no drama, just a flash drive in my pocket, labeled Female Kyout. As I walked past the control room one last time, the red live light blinked again. But this time, it wasn't mine. And that's when I realized I didn't need the camera anymore, because I'd already reclaimed the story. And this time, no one else gets to edit me.